What's going on guys, Craze here, and today we have some pretty big news regarding Cyberpunk 2077 and CD Projekt Red. Lately there's been a lot of talk about a multiplayer mode being in the works, about CD Projekt Red having a big roadmap planned up for future Cyberpunk content, but also another unannounced AAA game soon after that. So let's jump right in with everything we know so far, and of course a like on this video would also be super appreciated. Anyway, earlier this week there's been an article published by a Polish business news outlet that shed a bit more light on what's happening currently behind the scenes over at CD Projekt Red, as well as a few more words from the company's president. The company has reported to be, and I quote, much happier with Cyberpunk 2077's pre-orders than it did in the case of The Witcher 3 for the same time window. Cyberpunk pretty much topped all the charts as soon as the pre-orders were made available following E3 2019, and the collector's edition already having sold out completely within weeks. CD Projekt Red most probably recognized the huge momentum behind their newest game, which in turn gives them a lot more room to further expand upon the game, but also bring in more projects later down the line. Kaczynski later on reported that the company is currently working on multiple such projects related to Cyberpunk 2077, one of which is of course the main game, but there's also reports coming in about work being put on a mobile game in the Cyberpunk lore, about Gwent, their digital card game, as well as another unannounced AAA role-playing game set to release sometimes around 2021, though take that one with a grain of salt, judging by the huge amount of work CDPR is already putting into Cyberpunk 2077 as it is, as well as on its future expansion or expansions, as they later confirmed that to be the case as well. But going back on track, Cyberpunk 2077 currently has 3 of the 5 studios at CDPR working on it. 2 of them are actively engaged into developing the base game, while a third one was reported to have about 40 industry specialists all engaged into technology research and development. Unfortunately, CDPR didn't come up with any follow-up on that statement and what exactly R&D work is for, but early reports from the Bankier article were mentioning a multiplayer mode for the game. Now this wouldn't be the first time CDPR is mentioning multiplayer in Cyberpunk 2077, they actually did so as far back as 2013 and even back around the time E3 last month happened. But the info of course was always a little bit contradicting. Back in 2013, the company's managing director confirmed that the game will be a story-based RPG experience with amazing single player, but there's also going to be added multiplayer features. This comes in light of the fact that unlike The Witcher 3, which has a predefined character, Cyberpunk 2077 gives a ton of creative freedom on what we get to play with. So while it wouldn't make sense to see 10 Geralts running around, it would definitely fit in the universe of Cyberpunk, where you can pretty much create any character you want to. On top of that, earlier last month during E3 2019, the lead quest designer reaffirmed that the game will definitely be a single player game at launch, but this time around it was mentioned that the company isn't really working on a multiplayer anymore. That is why I said that the info is sometimes a little bit contradicting, though he did later mention that this didn't exclude the possibility for something like this to be added after the game's release. In fact, the latest statement on the subject all pointed out towards multiplayer being planned for sometimes after the game launches on all of the platforms, so it's not going to be on release but sometimes after that, so it could very well be that the R&D Kaczynski was mentioning earlier this week would be made solely for the multiplayer mode. The question now that remains is, what kind of multiplayer mode a game like Cyberpunk 2077 even have? They could definitely add an online co-op so people could group up and do missions together, which would sound interesting given the game's large selection of weapons and abilities, but there could also be something in the style of GTA Online, where you're playing in a lobby with a few dozen or so people on the same map as the main campaign, but maybe have different quests and different things to do. In fact, this very idea was said to have been talked about internally quite a lot, or at least something to take advantage of everything Night City and its surrounding areas have to offer. But tell me what you think about this. Would you like seeing Cyberpunk 2077 having something like GTA Online or a GTA Online style of multiplayer, or would you see something different being added to it? Personally, I think that the concept of letting players explore and play around a huge city is definitely a ton of fun. It definitely sounds very interesting, though I will say I was never a fan of the way Rockstar Games ended up implementing and handling GTA Online specifically, mostly because of how unbalanced the economy always felt to me and how dependent players were on the premium currency, for example. Like, you definitely need to buy those shark cards to afford most of the high expensive stuff in the game. But knowing how CDPR operates, I don't have any fear of microtransactions, as they pretty much confirmed that that is not going to be the case in this game at all, and they wouldn't even risk falling off with their fans so much after being so pro-consumers all of these years. But since the game is pretty much late in development and we still don't have a clear picture about this supposed multiplayer mode, I think it is safe to assume it's not going to be as important as single player is, or at the very least is not going to be such a major part of the game as GTA Online is for GTA 5. From everything that was said so far, CDPR's main focus was always the single player campaign, while online is most probably going to be just an added bonus for those who want to experience the game in different ways. But again, tell me what you think down below. Anyway, moving on, we were talking about a second unannounced AAA role-playing game planned for sometimes around 2021, which is really soon if you think about it. It's not just a rumor, by the way, it does indeed look like CDPR is planning on another big title around that time, as they also announced this in their 2018 report, as well as in their public roadmap, which is available on their website. Initial speculation has it that this would be Witcher 4, and it definitely made sense at the time because that would put it roughly 6 years after The Witcher 3's initial launch. And it's not like CD Projekt Red hinted towards any new franchises to begin with. But recently it's been confirmed that that is not going to be the case, as the new AAA game planned for that time is said to be still in the same Cyberpunk lore, according to an earlier statement coming from the company's vice president. The company unfortunately didn't come up with any follow-ups to this, but this raises a ton of new questions. If this is another Cyberpunk game, what would it even be about? Could this be a possible sequel to the first Cyberpunk 2077 game, or would it be a completely different one? And if it's indeed a different game, being an RPG, will it continue to be in first person, or will it be more close to the Witcher series and play as a third person game? That would be something very interesting to see. There's also the question about what appears to be a very tight schedule for a single company to release this many big AAA video games in such a short amount of time. Cyberpunk 2077 is already planned for 2020, with most of the company studios already working on it, while the rest of them are already engaged in different projects like Gwent or the unannounced mobile game, which leaves them with very little room to play with any other game, even more so with another big AAA title. I think at this point it's safe to assume that all of these plans for 2021 are most probably going to be pushed back or delayed for way later than that. Since the report is from last year or possibly even 2017, obviously a lot of things changed since then, and the company's current focus will probably remain on Cyberpunk 2077 for the near future. Furthermore, it's been announced that the game will have continued support post-launch, as well as at least one expansion, which will likely make the goal impossible to meet for 2021. It also sounds strange that the company would release another AAA Cyberpunk game after the first one in 2020 and not alternate it with The Witcher 4, for example, which is definitely being awaited by a ton of fans, including yours truly. Again, companies constantly set out goals that don't always get accomplished for various reasons, and given how massive Cyberpunk 2077 is shaping up to be, I think CDPR simply ended up doubling down on their current title to make sure it's going to deliver. It's been in development for a long time at this point, and too much time and effort was invested into it to not make sure it is as close to perfection as possible. Besides, CD Projekt is already heavily investing in their gaming platform Good Old Games, with GOG Galaxy Remake already being out in beta, and if Cyberpunk 2077 ends up becoming the biggest release of this generation, that could very well prove to be a massive boost to the entire platform, not just the company itself. We already had Steam, which has been stagnating for quite some time now. Then there's also Epic Games, which is looking into a forced domination by basically buying exclusivity left and right. So the next few years are probably going to be decisive for which platform will dominate in the upcoming decade, just like how it happened with Steam many years ago. So it's really interesting to see which of these will continue dominating? Will Steam continue to, well, steam ahead? Will Epic Games grab that market slice? Or will GOG make a comeback and pretty much raise those standards? I really hope it's going to go in the favor of CD Projekt Red, because they would definitely deserve it. But anyway, that's all we have so far. Exciting news overall, and I cannot wait to get my hands on the game next year. But until then, make sure to leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it. Also subscribe and activate that notification bell, and I will see you guys later, so peace out.